Hello and welcome to episode 246 of the Alamo Audible podcast, brought to you by the Dave Campbell's Texas Football Republican Football Podcast Network. This is your host, Jared Kalmus, joined as always by my co-host, Adrian Butis. Adrian, I'm calling this episode our season coverage kickoff episode. Obviously, we still have a ways to go until spring practice starts in a couple weeks. Just 1 week, actually, now that I think about it. And obviously a while till the first game, but we're getting back into season mode as far as coverage goes. I'm really excited.
We're absolutely getting back. What better way to title it in unison with the AAC Kickoff Media Days? This is the Alamo Audible Kickoff, where we recap the AAC Kickoff Media Days, and we're in full swing of UTSA 2024 football preview content. Yes, consider this the ribbon cutting ceremony. UTSA football is back. Alamo Audible is back. And we'd like to say that we're back and better than ever, baby, with these fantastic 4K cameras for your video viewing pleasure. YouTube, IG, TikTok, wherever you like to consume your video content. We're going to have video content for your podcasts there.
Yep, it's something we've been really talking about wanting to do for a really long time, and I think we finally figured it out. I feel like Alamo Audible has a better AI strategy than most companies these days, and we found a way to make it work. So shout out to Aaron for his help on that. Shout out to AI. Shout out to tech. Shout out to the Adobe Creative Suite. Shout out to everyone who supports us on Patreon or bought something from HomeField, because that has enabled us to get these fancy webcams, upgrade our lighting, right? So we're back in business, man. We're glad to be back on YouTube. Sorely needed. We touch a totally different market of fan for UTSA there than traditional podcast episodes. So really excited. Hope some of you guys are checking this episode out, and you'll be seeing more of us throughout the year and coming years, hopefully.
It's funny, man. This is something we're probably going to touch on in this episode, but Lisa Campos was interviewed by Inside Motorsports JJ Perez while out there at AAC Kickoff, and she directly spoke to the investments that were made in the creative department at UTSA and the immediate and incredible dividends that has paid. It's all about the content, baby. And so, yes, we, much like UTSA Athletics, are making those direct investments into our creative department, baby. Yes.
Yep. If you're watching on YouTube, I just swung in my chair to get a sip of water, and the camera followed me. Yeah, fancy. Whoa. So we mentioned that we used some of the commission money we got from HomeField to buy these webcams. So thank you to everyone who used our code UTSA Once HomeField on the HomeField apparel website. You got 15% off your first order. I like a ton of savings on that from the fan base, which is awesome. Mm-hmm. So if you ordered already, you should be receiving your gear. But if not, get on it. They sold out of the hat within an hour, right? So no telling how long these shirts are going to be around. So go and grab them when we can. There's a hoodie there as well. I haven't got mine in yet, but hopefully everyone's been thrilled with the shirts and all that.
Yeah, I'm eagerly awaiting for my package from HomeField to get here. I did get a couple of shirts. I was able to get into the hat release. It was 10 minutes, Jared, that it sold out. I think the pre-release for those that had the HomeField app on their phone was actually at 8 a.m. instead of 9 a.m. Mm-hmm. By 8:09, that hat was sold out whenever I went to go look at it. I made my purchase about 8:02, and I didn't get the hoodie. I think I need to go back and get that bad boy because I don't want to miss out on it. I have a hard time getting hoodies during warm weather, but I just feel like I know I need this one. Very, very excited on the HomeField drop. We've been asking for it for a long time. That's why our coupon code is UTSA Once HomeField. You can still use it to save 15% off. That's not going anywhere. And hopefully HomeField's collection of UTSA merchandise continues to just expand, and you guys can continue to get great savings on it. I also have to shout out the UTSA fan base marketplace for making the UTSA collection the #1 seller on HomeField Apparel's Summer 7 launch. There were 7 universities that made their debut on HomeField Apparel. UTSA was the #1 sold. Of those universities, you have the 87-year-old Pepperdine, the 100-year-old Delta State, and the 125-year-old Northern Arizona University. Shout out Lisa Campos. And we beat all those guys out with, I don't know, a half of the university history and lineage that those schools do. Really, really impressive. The UTSA market is in demand, baby. So keep churning out premium goods for the UTSA folks because they have good knowledge.
And hopefully HomeField got the message that there is a market out there for this stuff. So, hopefully we'll get more drops, more collections in the future. And you can always shop HomeField through the banner ad on our website. If you click into HomeField, you buy anything from the link on their website, we get commission on it with nothing out of your pocket. So appreciate you guys supporting us there, and supporting Dave Campbell's as well. So Adrian, Media Days in Arlington snuck up on you, didn't it? Snuck up on me.
Yeah, it sure did. It sure did. It was actually like Monday morning that I'm scrolling through social media and I was like, oh crap, this week is Media Days. I had no idea. I mean, it completely slipped my mind, I guess, with all of the hype surrounding the release of NCAA football.
Yeah, the hurricane we had in Houston too.
Hurricanes in Houston. Yeah. I mean, it's so crazy. It's like football season seems to sneak up on us every single year, despite us always preparing for it and looking forward to it. It's like in a blink of an eye, it's here. So Media Days was in fact Monday, Tuesday. We're sitting here Tuesday, so that's the end of like kind of the main day. Monday's more of just like a hi, hello, meet and greet. We're going to play video games and take pictures. But then you get into the meat and potatoes on Tuesday. All of the coaches take the podium for their interviews, their press conferences, their speeches, what have you. Tim Pernetti with a big like 45-minute introduction.
I didn't watch it.
No, I think I got like 10 or 15 minutes into it, but it was more so on in the background. There were so many UTSA interviews that I had to watch and catch up on all day. We had to prioritize, right? Yeah. But
I usually watch, at least like 4 or 5 different coach interviews, like the ones that I'm interested, like a new coach maybe, or someone coming off of an interesting season or whatever. But I didn't get a chance to watch any of those tonight. I just kind of crammed the UTSA stuff to get ready for this busy day at work, and then I went to a chicken sandwich cooking competition after work. So free beer, lots of free fried chicken sandwiches. Yeah, it was good. The winning sandwich was a Thai inspired chicken sandwich. So it had like maybe some peanuts. I don't know. There was some crunch, some like cilantro, like it's almost like a pesto.
It was like a very, very good. Yeah, like a zesty sort of sauce. Right. Some kick to it.
Right. Yeah. Good stuff.
Oh man, what a hell of an event to be at, man.
Yeah, it's nice. Yeah, it's for my friend's work. It was awesome.
No, none of us were on site at the AAC kickoff. We were instead trying out chicken sandwiches. But I was listening to the stream this morning while fixing up breakfast with the family. So I got to catch a couple of comments from the coaches before Traylor, which was a lot. But I always find the insights and the talking points coming out of these media day sessions just incredible. Like it never ceases to surprise me, like how many good talking points there are to chew on. And maybe it's because the first time we've heard so many people talk for so long and so much in so many months. There's a lot to talk about from head coach Jeff Traylor, from the players in attendance, Oscar Cardenas and Jamal Egon, Lisa Campos there. It's our first time hearing about football in so long that I guess, everything's new, everything's exciting, but there's always a lot of good tidbits to chew on. I think we got a heck of a lot of those from Jeff Traylor.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, before we get into anything in particular, I would just say, like, my takeaway is I saw a UTSA team similar to last year, comes in very confident, not overly, right, not cocky or anything like that, but they were picked number 2 by the media in the poll, which I'm a little bit surprised. I mean, I thought they would have been 3rd or 4th most likely, but to see them as number 2 and them not feel like they were surprised or it was undeserved or anything like that was positive. And then, I mean, they were even willing to talk about the playoffs, right? And they're like, we're got to stay focused on the day to day, but like that is a conversation that we have. And the fact that they're comfortable having that conversation, I think shows a lot of like faith, trust, and confidence in this team's ability, and tells us a little bit about where their expectations are at.
Yeah, and I think the fact that UTSA gets that second ranking in the preseason poll, it's it speaks to the talent, and I think more so than anything else, it speaks to Jeff Traylor's leadership here and
Yeah.
how much he's respected by his peers, and at the same time, how much of a threat he is viewed as on
Mhm.
game day by his peers. I mean, those
Yeah. I mean,
guys
I can
know.
guarantee you, like, if UTSA had this same roster coming to season, but Traylor had left, there's no way they'd be number two.
No chance.
And that's not to say the roster is not super talented, because I think that's the case, right? But I think just the respect that people have for Jeff Traylor is monumental.
Yeah, well, and look at Tulane, going down to number 3 in the rankings, which you could argue either way, is pretty commendable,
Mhm.
just considering how much they lost and losing a head coach. But it also speaks to what losing a head coach will do to the program, right?
Yep.
There's a team that won the dang conference last season. So, yeah, man, Jeff Traylor is, I think, feared and respected amongst his peers for very, very good reason. He does a really good job of sort of giving you UTSA's resume over the time that he's been here, how they performed at home, how they performed overall. And the guy coaches ball games extremely well. And we talk about the one possession games. He loves talking about one possession games, and he continues to beat
Mhm.
that hammer that, yeah, we're probably going to still have a lot of one possession games this season.
Yeah.
But they seem to enjoy that. They seem to like the back and forth, and they perform well whenever it comes down to those fourth quarter endings, overtime
I
endings.
wonder if Jeff like knows that's a flex to talk about how many one score games he wins.
Yeah, it's weird because it's like, I guess you could view it either way, right?
Yeah.
It's a flex, but it's also like, well, how come you're not beating anybody by more
Yeah,
than
when
that?
we more. Yeah, we've
Yeah.
discussed this on the podcast, but I think it's worth repeating again. I mean, I think a big reason why UTSA plays a lot of those one score games because they rotate guys so much, right? They play such a deep bench. That's
Mhm.
a reason why they retain so much talent, right? Because a guy that's third string, but still getting a solid 20, 25 snaps a game, much more likely to stick around and like kind of see the light at the end of the tunnel of stepping into the starting role. But that's snaps that you're taking away from starters that may have a bigger impact, right? So that's always been my theory on that. And I think it makes sense, but I think it's the right approach. I mean, it's a long season and style points are great, especially when you're trying to get that top G5 spot in the playoff. But in the long run, it's the more sustainable approach, and I think it's the right one.
That's right. That's right. And another thing I think the ranking alludes to is there is a lot of faith in the passing of the baton at quarterback for UTSA. Like, clearly, coaches among the league have seen enough of a sample size from Owen McGowan and Ailey Marburger, and they're saying that there's a quarterback battle. We're not going to know who's going to be the starting quarterback. I think we're all still probably pretty bullish on the Owen side for that.
Yeah,
But there's a big enough
yeah.
sample size there.
I told my friend at that chicken sandwich event, he's the starter in the new college football game. So I mean, they have to patch the game if he's not a starter.
Yeah, come on, folks. We know it's
but no, a counterpoint on that, Adrian, though, is it the fact that the coaches in the media have seen enough of Owen and Eddie to feel comfortable with him, or do they think it doesn't matter that much because they think the team is going to be that good that they don't have to have A+ play from a quarterback to be the number 2 team in the conference?
You might be right, Jared. I mean, look at all the talent that's returning outside of that position. I mean, you've got a really, really stacked trenches on both sides of the ball.
Mm-hmm.
And you've got an unbelievable running back room, which I think is going to get a tremendous loins share of the offensive duties, especially through the months of September. And you still have fantastic hands here at wide receiver position, at the tight end position, University of Hands, San Antonio, baby. So, yeah, I definitely could see that going either way too. How great does Owen or Eddie Lee need to be this season or the first half of this season? Maybe they're not going to be tasked with having to do too much, but we also know the way that Jeff Traylor likes to play football. I can't see us being a ground and pound
Yeah.
old school football program for outside of half of a drive.
I can't remember. I can't remember what the question was or what the context was, but Traylor did have a quote. I mean, he did it today where he was like, "We're not going to huddle often. Like, we're not going to be boring. We're not going to play." But he's like, "You can watch NFL if that's what you want to see, but my Roadrunners are going to play up tempo. We're going to throw the ball around. We're going to get after it."
That's exactly
Because
right.
I always tell people he's a basketball guy at heart. That's how he came up. Yeah, he coached basketball before he coached football, right? He wants to put points on the board.
Exactly right. And that was a response to Greg Luca asking about the telecommunications from the sideline
Oh, with the
now with
signaling.
earpiece.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
with signaling. So yeah, I mean, Taylor's like, look, man, we're not getting no huddle. That's for sure. We still got to do signals. We're still going to have guys run up to the line of scrimmage and figuring out the play on the fly. That's the way the Roadrunners play football, and appropriately so, right? The other thing, Jared, I want to go back to playoff talk. This is big time triangle violation, but I think it's a
Mhm.
necessary one for this team to have in the locker room. It is astounding to me that we're having that playoff conversation already in the preseason before we've even started practice, but it's something that we're talking about with new quarterback at the helm, with this insane changing of the guard that's happening at UTSA. For them to be so transparent on it already, I've just really today I was really appreciative, amazed, um, humbled by Jeff Traylor's comments about the college football playoff. He directly approached what you some would and could argue has been a flaw to his coaching approach in the early parts of the season. He said, look, we've got to take those September games more seriously. In the past, my high school coach inside of me has, for lack of a better term, he didn't say this, allowed for us to be, I don't know, a little more focused on trying to improve in September than trying to win in September, trying to figure out our identity, trying to figure out who we are as a football team. And there's no room for that anymore.
Yeah, he wants to
UTS,
beat GJ Kinney.
he
Is the
wants to
thing.
beat Kenny very, very, very badly. But this
Yeah,
is a completely different dialogue, a completely different tone and voice that we're
yeah,
hearing Jeff Traylor talk about September, talk about out of conference schedule. He always says, look, this is the preseason. Look, we've got to get things sharpened for conference play. That's when the real season starts, whenever conference plays. And all of us have always been sitting here like, dude, this conference and district in high school are not the
hmm
same thing. Why are you
hmm
treating it like it's the same thing? Out of conference is super, super important. And now it's as if the light bulb has gone off for Jeff Traylor, and maybe by way of force, that September is extremely important. You cannot afford to have a setback game. You can't afford to have a loss in the game that you're not supposed to lose if you want to make a run at the college football playoff. I appreciate his humility in admitting that and being so forthcoming on, yeah, we've got to change the way that we approach the first 4 games of the season
yeah.
from now.
Trailer's always been good about that. He's really good at self-reflection, even if like he may get defensive or dismissive about some kind of shortcoming or failure like in the season. I feel like he always like reevaluates in the offseason and then comes back with like, and I can't think of a really good example right now, but he'll always come back with like a change in his approach, right, to address what may have been an issue in the previous season.
Yeah. Yeah. And then he discusses the historic woes that UTSA has had under his era in September. Where he's like, I think we're probably 500 in September, and then close to 800 or 900 in October and
Yeah.
November.
Yeah.
And so what's up with that? And look, this is a team that the talent is there to be a winning program right off of the bat, to have that impressive September record. They just have to sort of get their identity locked in prior
Mm-hmm.
to those first 4 games of the season. And I think that's usually what we see. And that's the interesting thing, right? Because we've had the same team for the past 4 or 5 years, but we were always still like searching for our identity in September. Even in Frank Harris's 7th year, at the quarterback, we're still searching for identity in September. We can't really afford to do that this year. The Traylor knows that, and I think the team knows that too.
Well, a lot of talk about NIL at Media Day, which, like, no surprise, that's the name of the game these days. Probably gets a little bit old, I would say,
Mm.
arguably, maybe. But there were some pretty interesting comments, pretty good discussion, right? You know, a couple weeks ago, I was kind of upset because the new AAC commissioner, Tim Pernetti, kind of floated out there the idea of an NIL ceiling or cap, if you will. within the conference, which I thought was a terrible idea because in college football, you do not just compete within your conference, right? Like 25% of your schedule at least is out of conference, right? So why would you can't handicap yourself like that? But it struck up a conversation, a discussion, and actually Trent Dilfer at UAB said there should actually be an NIL floor where every program in this conference has to have some certain level of commitment to NIL. And for those that don't know, I mean, the floodgates are open when it comes to NIL, right? Like schools can directly do whatever with NIL now, right? That the courts have determined that, and that's not changing. That's not going away. There's probably more deregulation coming soon. The SEC, the Big Ten, Big 12, ACC are going to start directly sharing revenue with their student athletes, right? And it's going to be at some point in time, G5 schools are going to start doing that as well. So I agree with Dilfer. I think every school in the AAC should at least have to pay every athlete, I don't know, $1,000 a semester or somewhere to start. But someone asked Jeff Traylor what he thought about those, and it was interesting. You could tell that he had thought about it a lot, right? My interpretation of it was he seemed to be more on Dilfer's side than Pernetti's as far as that goes. And he said, yeah, like, the cap would be nice because of how the NFL does it. And there's more of an equal playing field. And you kind of know what each team has budget for, if you will. But he just, it's not realistic to do it in this conference where, like, if you're winning the AAC consistently, you're going to the playoffs every year and you're having to compete with those Power 5 programs that are paying, a certain amount, right? So to say, oh, like we have money that we could spend on our athletes, but we can't because the conference doesn't allow us, to me is a really poor rule. I really hate that. But Traylor said that he felt like there does have to be some kind of baseline institutional investment because for those schools that are not investing, then they get to reap the benefits of those that are, right? And increased TV deals, increased college football playoff payouts, especially in the basketball realm, right? UTSA is probably guilty of this right now, right? Like all these schools make these Elite Eight, Final Four runs, bringing a lot of money for the conference, and that ends up back at UTSA, even though historically we haven't really put a lot of money or success into basketball, right? So that was a really interesting conversation. Like it's cool to hear that in the mainstream now. A very different era, but yeah, I don't know. Adrian, what are your thoughts on a floor versus a cap when it comes to NIL?
I think the floor makes a lot of sense. I think it's got to be implemented for all the reasons that you've laid out. I mean, and there's got to be some sort of uniformity amongst the schools in how players are getting paid, how much they're making. What does the floor look like? Is it a percentage of revenue? Is it a hard dollar amount that each athlete needs to get paid? They've got to further define that and get it figured out. But yeah, there has to be a floor. If it, for so many reasons, there has to be a floor, but especially if the American Athletic Conference wants to remain competitive with the upper echelon of schools, yeah, you have to have that. I think that the cap is a very, very tricky and slippery slope because it's on a conference basis, right? If the NCAA came out and said, we're putting a cap on all the teams. Sure. This is how much. It doesn't matter if you're the University of Texas or if you're Texas State or whoever. This is the most amount of money that you can allocate to NIL. That's the only way I think a cap would actually work.
100% agree. Yeah.
It'd have to be implemented from the very, very top level. On a conference level, you're really pigeonholing yourself. You're not letting yourself be competitive above your conference, right? And that's the issue that teams like UTSA have already been facing with NIL, right? Because the bigger donors are at the bigger schools.
It doesn't even have to be competing up a level, but dominating down a level as well, right? Like, Memphis, they had that FedEx investment, right? So they're dropping like $1.5–2 million or whatever into NIL, right? So like if you're a Sunbelt school, how can you compete with that? You know what I'm saying? So if like the AAC or the AAC, sorry, was like, oh, you can't spend more than $500,000 a year. So they have money that they can't use for that. And then like that's NIL money that, Arkansas State or whoever can match, right? So then you're not allowing for that gap to grow between even just other group of five teams, which I think is again another horrible mistake, right? And just, if you have those institutional resources, it's in your best interest. Like, it's a fiduciary responsibility, right? To make the most of that and give your program the best chance to succeed in this open market.
Now, does implementing a cap give you more bargaining power to go ask for the big donors for more money? We can only give our players this much from UTSA, so we need more from you, Jared Kalmus. We need more from you, HEB and Valero, whatever.
Well,
right?
I think theoretically it could kind of kill this like endless rat race of NIL money, right? Like, there's a lot of like booster fatigue of like, well, I'll just cut this huge check, and now you're telling me we got to keep up with Memphis and find another $500,000, right?
Yeah.
So if there's a cap, I mean, I think it makes it easier, and that there's a number we have to hit. We're going to hit it, and it's going to stay consistent, right? Like, that would be easier and probably save a lot of heartache for a lot of people. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like they're like, collectives aren't going to go away, right? Like, they're going to have a diminished role, I think, like once revenue sharing becomes completely widespread. But I think there's always going to be like some of those side NIL deals, right? So even if you have a cap, I think there's still going to be pressure for collectives, right, to kind of get that remaining, X% that it's going to take to go compete with another school, even if you're like at a cap per se.
Absolutely. But the cap is a slippery slope. I only think it works if it's implemented from the top level down. You're doing it on a conference level. It's going to be really hard.
The trick is, right, I don't know if we've talked about this on the podcast or not before, but to do that, you have to have collective bargaining. Like, that's the only way that these pro sports can do it, because the players are unionized and they have a collective bargaining agreement with the players union, the players association, whatever. And I don't know how that model could work for college, where there's like the limited eligibility. Because like, you think about, like Chris Paul is like the NBA player union rep, like he's been in the league 38 years or whatever, right? Yeah. I guess Frank Harris could do it. Maybe he's been around long enough. But I think it's really hard to have like a centralized like leadership organization, if you will, or hierarchy, when like guys only have 4 or 5 years as a collegiate athlete. They cycle out, and just the player experience is so wide in Division I, right? Like, what you get at ULM versus what you get at UTSA versus what you get at Texas Tech versus what you get at Texas are all vastly different, right? So I think it's really hard to have collective bargaining when the economic realities and the outcomes are so vastly different, across how many schools do we have for FBS now? Like 138? I don't know.
138.
Kennesaw State coming in, moving that number.
Yeah, and Jeff Traylor speaks about, he thinks there should be an investment required. He's a big fan of the revenue sharing in the floor. He also speaks about, with the athletic department now being involved with NIL and the new rule changes, that him and Campos have talked about hiring staff specifically for that.
Yeah.
That's pretty exciting.
Yeah, they're looking to hire someone who's essentially going to be the athletics program NIL person.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because, I mean, they can totally do that now. Like, you saw when HomeField launched, they had UTSA student athletes wearing HomeField apparel, posting it on like the main UTSA Instagram account.
Official account. Yeah.
I don't know if that was NIL or not, but it could be, right? That is allowed now, that UTSA could work with HomeField, push that stuff out, get some money for it, and then share, 60-70% or whatever with those student athletes. That's
UTSA gets the money. All the athletes in the photo shoots get some money.
Yep.
Everybody eats, and then tons of UTSA fans rush to buy HomeField stuff.
Right.
Now,
it's much easier to make like the commercial like return on investment when you go through those official channels than when you go through a collective. Like from the outside firm's perspective. Yeah,
absolutely. And that person will be in charge also with working with those collectives, right? And trying to coordinate the best way, because UTSA and other schools, they don't want those collectives to die. They need those collectives to stay intact and to continue to supply dollars, even with revenue share involved.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah, it's going to be a really interesting dynamic for that person to come in and try to take over. But I think it's something overall to be extremely excited about. I don't know if we can fit the bill to get an Alamo Audible merch photo shoot on the official UTSA socials, but that's an avenue that's possible for us now, and that's extreme. I mean, it's just exciting, and it really really opens up what's possible. I think for UTSA, schools like UTSA, and more importantly, our student athletes that are there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and one of the most interesting things that came out of Media Day for me, Jeff Traylor, mentioned it, floated it, that, he said that Dr. Campos has a plan for revenue sharing at UTSA. She has a strategy for it, which I thought UTSA would get there in a couple of years, and maybe they still will, right? Because you can't just pull money out of thin air and completely gut your budget overnight, right? But that was encouraging to see, right? That they're not shutting it down. They're not shying away from it. They're embracing the reality. And I can guarantee you they're ahead of the curve of most Group of 5 programs that are like, yeah, that's never going to happen here. And I still think, even, like, let's say the Big 12 schools are paying everyone, $30K a year, whatever. You don't have to go match that. If you can get every athlete, $5K a year guaranteed, and when other schools that you're competing with are offering zero, that's massive. Absolutely massive.
That's huge. That's huge. What, $500 a month for a student athlete? Come on. Mm-hmm. And Jeff Traylor said something along the lines of UTSA's NIL is 50% of where the teams in the top of the league are. Jared, is that accurate?
I think so, because the teams at the top of the league are Memphis and Tulane that are really strong in NIL, right? Like I just mentioned that Memphis has like the FedEx investment in NIL. It's like one or 2 million or something like that. And my understanding is UTSA's 500 to 750K overall. NIL is like ranges that I've heard,
Yeah.
Of course, that's a moving target, right? It goes up and down, but yeah, that sounds about right. So while like I think what Jeff said is true, I think it's also like they're probably third or fourth. So it's not like they're in the middle of the pack.
He made it sound like
yeah. But it's like it's an unequal distribution, right? You got like Memphis and Tulane, and then maybe like UTSA, USF right here. They're like way down to the rest of the league. So
yeah, we'll have to see, how much separation does that NIL budget really, really create? Because we were a second half away from beating Tulane going to the championship game last season.
Right, totally. But I will say, I mean, go look at some of the transfers that Tulane got, and some of those guys are on another level. But UTSA also got guys that arguably have better pedigrees, better recruiting rankings and stuff without that crazy NIL money. Right?
Well, this is I think what is such a harping point for UTSA. It's something to be so incredibly proud of because it's just ridiculously impressive. Jeff Traylor loves to talk about UTSA's record at his time here. He also loves to talk about the very, very small number of turnover that he's had here. What, 3 players have left in the 5 years that he's been head coach. He even told the story of a 600,000. I think the final number came out to 600.
That number keeps going up.
It keeps going up. Every interview he did throughout the afternoon, that number kept going. So the final number was $675,000 turned down to stay at UTSA for Mr. Joe Evans, allegedly.
Yeah.
And he talks about Oscar Cardenas. He talks about, the guys on the squad that are getting offered more money to go play somewhere else. He says, he had a quote along the lines of, they're not making as much as they could make elsewhere. They're making a fraction of what they could, but San Antonio is taking care of them. Mm-hmm. And so there's, like you said, Jared, enough money going into these guys' pockets to keep them at a school that they like playing at, a coach that they like playing for. Mm-hmm. They want to be able to win games. They can win games here. They are winning games here. And so, whenever a guy looks like, and I think there's been enough stories over the couple of years that NIL has existed. There's been enough horror stories of guys going and chasing that money and then not getting any minutes, or going to just a program that is losing football games.
Yep.
That, guys have been, I don't know, maybe scared straight to a degree. So it's just astounding that UTSA has been able to keep the number of players here, despite not being able to shell out the big checks that the big schools are.
Can I make an appeal to the Spurs fans here? Right? Spurs fans always think that teams are going to take guys are going to take the hometown discount to stay with the Spurs, to play for Popovich, right? Manu did it, Tony Parker did it, Duncan did it.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen anymore, right? But the UTSA Roadrunners are doing it, right? You probably got like 10 or 15 guys every year that could go get more money elsewhere, but stay in San Antonio, right? So maybe that should be a message that, people market the team, right, to the rest of San Antonio, right? So they're loyal to San Antonio, they're loyal to this program, so they deserve our support. They deserve a packed Alamo.
I like that a lot. Jeff Traylor, man, people want to play for him. People believe in the triangle.
Yeah.
I still love talking about it. So,
man, I just really hope that Joe Evans gets drafted this year. Man,
you'll get that money one way or another. You'll get that money.
Charger.
So, really impressive with the NIL talk, all the massive changes that are coming to NIL. I expect we're just going to hear a heck of a lot more about it, probably in not too much time. I think the news is just going to keep on flooding our airwaves and our ears about NIL at UTSA, what the plan is, what Lisa's plan is, and how that's changing. I imagine we're just going to continue learning tons more about that sooner than later, because it's one of those things that everybody is moving and running towards at as fast as they can, getting their NIL up and to the best place that it can be.
Yep. It's always a critical time in college sports, but the ACC is on the ropes, right? A lot of schools went out of there. So you had to put yourself in the best position at all times, because, if things go crazy, there could be some spots open in that conference. And you want to put yourself in that same discussion that Memphis, Tulane, App State maybe are in, to, maybe make another move up in conference, right? So
That's right. So we got a lot of really good insight about NIL. We got a lot of good insight about college football playoff lingering in the back of Jeff Traylor's mind. How about some insight about how UTSA football is actually going to look in the 2024 football season, Jared?
Yeah. Anything pop out at you?
Jeff Traylor keeps cards close, but I do think he let a couple of things out, and I don't think anything that was like super surprising. But I think some points for fans to know about, to look forward to, or to maybe be weary of. We talked about returning talent outside of the quarterback, right? So he plans to play all three running backs that we saw last season. That's Corian Barnes, Robert Henry, Rocco Griffin.
I still can't get over that, man. I can't believe all three guys are still here.
Yeah,
That's
man.
crazy.
And if there's any reason, or if there's any way to have a less stringent load on the new starting quarterback for the Roadrunners, it's via the three-headed monster that's going to be in the backfield. Probably the most stout running back room that UTSA has probably ever had, just when we look at pure talent and production. And hell, rivals the service academies for the most legit, scariest running back room in the conference. We also know the trenches are going to be deep. He particularly shared excitement for the defensive line and also returning linebackers. But he also really harped on losing every single cornerback. And I don't know if that's literal or not, but he essentially said that we lost every single cornerback on the roster. We lost all, I think he said the word all like 3 or 4 times, lost all of our cornerbacks. A lot of pressure on cornerbacks coach Nick Graham to get that figured out. And he actually said that, which we're confident in Nick Graham's ability to do that. We always have question marks about the cornerback position. They always end up being better than we expected them to be.
Agreed.
but it seems like it's going to be a bigger hole to dig for Nick Graham to dig us out of this year. And whenever talking about September, he said, look, we got to run the ball well. And can the corners survive?
Survive, man.
Wow. I thought that was really, really scary whenever he said that. But that was and I quote, sir.
Dang. I don't know. I'm like concerned about the corners too, right? Because I mean, I've said this many times, right? The Denver Harris edition is a guy kind of, I can take it or leave it, right? Because he's got to prove that he can stay on the field and stay out of trouble, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm still pretty high on Zay Frazier, man. Like when he played last year after he got his eligibility issue sorted out, I thought he was pretty effective, right? Like teams went after him and he held up well. So, you know, and then, you know, like Dumas left the team, but he came back, but he like barely played last year. So I don't know what category Traylor would put him in, but he at least knows the system. He knows the guys, he knows the coaches, right? So it's not like they're completely starting over from scratch. But it's very thin. It's a concerning position for sure.
It is. It is. He also said on roster depth, he was asked about roster depth directly, and he said, we're deeper at almost every single position. So, I mean, I guess that would be minus quarterback and cornerback. Well, you could argue we're still pretty deep at quarterback. I mean, we have two guys.
Yeah, I think you got two guys that you really trust, and you've got a third that's been a Division I starter.
Sure. Yeah. So there's depth. There's still depth there.
Right.
So deeper at almost every position. And then he said, summer injuries this summer have already impacted one position. And whenever Greg Luca asked which position that was, Traylor said, we still got to find out. I don't know what the hell that meant. Do you know what position he's talking about?
I don't. I know that there were a lot of injuries at running back in the spring, but I don't know if like that maps to what Traylor was referring to.
Okay. So we'll have to see that. But overall, no, I think there's not going to be too many crazy surprises as far as the roster goes.
Yeah, I think
we're pretty confident in Owen being the starting quarterback. We've got to see how quickly the cornerbacks can get into shape. Mm-hmm. And we've got to see if Jeff Traylor is actually able of altering his high-flying game plan just a little bit to take advantage of the roster, in particular the running back room that you have and the depth and the talent that you have at that position.
Yeah. I'm excited to see that offensive line. I've heard a lot of good things. They seem confident. I saw there's a freshman who I didn't even know was in the portal, said that he's going JUCO this year. Was Rapati? So I don't know what happened there, but I took that as a good sign for depth that they feel good about the transfers. If he left the program, probably didn't see playing time immediately. Just speculation on my part, but so I'm excited about that. They seem very athletic up front. Like some of the pictures I've seen, I'm like, oh, yeah, that's a Power 5 offensive lineman right there. So
let's go.
That's one thing I'm really looking forward to.
Let's go. That's excellent. That's excellent.
So, Jamal Liggin, Oscar Cardenas, the two player representatives that traveled to Media Day this year, and it's a really cool stat that I didn't realize. Those two guys have started every game that Jeff Traylor has been at UTSA. How cool is that, man?
Phenomenal. It was pretty hard to wrap my mind around. Right? And I feel like for Oscar, like I know that is probably in fact true, but for Jamal, it just seems crazy to me. And wow, I mean, those guys really, I mean, you talk about team captains, right? You talk about the guys who are gonna get those area code
those
jersey numbers, baby. Yeah. And there was a little bit from Jeff Traylor there on who's gonna be a single digit. Right. And I think he said something along the lines like there's some names that y'all don't know about yet. And I don't even really know yet. And I think a guy's going to be this and he ends up being that, which always happens. Right. But I think there's a lot of excitement there. We're probably going to get some names on that single digit that I think are going to surprise us, or maybe some names that not a lot of fans recognize, Jared. Mm-hmm. That's pretty exciting. But dude, Oscar Cardenas. Wow. You talk about a tall glass of water, baby. I mean, dude, this guy went from a boiling pot of water to a tall glass of water. Bro. Just incredible, man. NFL scout, we don't know from which team, tells Oscar Cardenas, look, buddy, you can either gain 20 pounds and move to offensive line, or you can lose 20 pounds and stay at tight end. Oscar said, I'm going to lose 25 for you. He lost 25 pounds this offseason. He looks incredibly lean.
Mm-hmm.
He looks like in fighting shape. I mean,
Yep.
like it's just incredible, man. I just on the weight cut and the physiognomy of Oscar Cardenas right now, I'm expecting some high flying circus catches, some incredible separation on those quick slant routes over the middle. I'm just seeing a different beast right now, and I'd imagine his muscle mass has gone up, muscle density gone up, and body fat gone down. And so I'm expecting a quicker, stronger, faster Oscar Cardenas out there, dude. I'm really, really excited. I think Jared and I were both in the camp that maybe a little half step or full step back last season from Oscar in terms of production, ball catching production, that is in particular, and even blocking a little bit, getting downfield and making those blocks. Doesn't look like it's going to be the case this year.
Mm-hmm.
And so Oscar Cardenas just looks fantastic.
You know, Adrian, I did a radio interview with the ECU radio station, Pirate FM, and they were asking me about the wide receiver position. And, I mentioned that, Zakari left 2 years ago. He was like the go-to third down guy to get that first down conversion. And then last year it was Josh Cephas. He was the go-to guy, get that first down conversion when it's really needed. And I was like, there's a lot of talent at the wide receiver position, but it's really unknown who's going to be that go-to, right? 3rd and 3, the box is stacked. You got to throw it. Who's going to get the ball? Well, having seen Oscar at Media Day and seeing the shape that he's in, I think Oscar might be that guy.
Yeah.
I think they may be hitting that tight end repeatedly, right? And I've always felt like that's when this offense is at its best, when the tight ends are really involved. Because when they have that strong run game and then that tight end is a threat, right, to release after, driving you up and down the field from a blocking perspective, adds so much dynamic flexibility, right, to the offense. So
yeah,
I'm really stoked, man. If Oscar can catch like over 400 yards this year, offense is gonna be in pretty good shape.
I mean, it's the experience of Oscar, the pedigree. He's been here so long, and then the offensive captain that he's going to be this year. And Eddie Lee and Owen, who have they been throwing the ball to a lot in practice over their whole entire time being at UTSA? It's Oscar Cardenas, despite the carousel of different guys they've seen at the wide receiver position. Oscar's always been there, right? So they probably already have a good familiarity with throwing the ball to Oscar. On that note, Jared, Jeff Traylor was directly asked about the health of JT Clark, JT Clark. And he said his spirit and mind are in a way better place than they were last season. Spirit and mind, not
the knee,
not physical, not the body.
Yeah.
It sounds to me like the question mark is still out on JT Clark. If we do see him, it's not going to be in September. It's probably not going to be till later in the season, maybe mid-season, hopefully. But it doesn't sound like he's going to be taking the field in summer, fall camp. So that's unfortunate.
That's my expectation for now. Unfortunately, I just hope he gets back on the field at all. Right, he really deserves to go out on a strong note, to win a conference championship. Right, to have those big catches that we know and really miss. Right, but they can't rush him back. Right, they may have rushed him back last time, reactivated the injury, so they've got to take it slow, like for his own health. Right.
I think so. Yeah, I definitely think so.
One interesting thing that Oscar mentioned in his interview is they asked about that tight end position, and Oscar said, I think you're going to see 4 different tight ends touch the field this year.
Yeah, baby.
That's exciting, isn't it?
Yeah, baby. So I've got Oscar Cardenas, I've got Houston Thomas, I've got Dan Dishman, and then from Kingwood, Texas, Patrick Overmeyer, who saw action in 5 games last season.
Did he really? Wow.
Yes.
Man, I don't recall that at all.
Yeah, he was coming in at the end of games.
They burned his red shirt, huh?
Yeah, bro. He was in the Frisco Bowl, played against UNT, played against UAB. He was out there. This guy was a multi-sport athlete. He played quarterback at Kingwood Park.
Yep.
Yeah, dude.
Kid's a weapon, for sure.
His cousin is Kyle Rudolph.
Yep.
So yeah, I was high on Patrick Overmeyer whenever we did our position previews last preseason,
Mhm.
whenever we were getting ready. Um, so yeah, I'm very excited. I think he's just going to
Yeah. And I feel like you hit on that one. If you played in 5 games as a true freshman, that's a win. That's a win for Adrian.
big time, baby, big
Oh,
time. So yeah, so four is pretty stacked in the tight end positions. That means you're going to have guys with very specific roles. I mean, we know Oscar's kind of utility, in fact, in that he can block and he can catch at the same time. But we also know like a guy like Dan Dishman is really just more of like a catching tight end. And then maybe you have a guy like Patrick Overmeyer that can get in there and then push some bodies around. So I don't know. We'll see.
two at the same time. I think we're going to see a lot of this year.
The double tight end set. Jared's
Yeah.
been asking for that and prophesizing that for a long time. We've kind of been wanting more of it.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see.
Yeah, I mean, I think especially in this conference where you see a lot of 3-man defensive lines, right? And you put a tight end on each side. That's going to put a lot of pressure on those defenses to block the edge. And when you got guys like Robert Henry that have the speed to get out there and take it to the second and third level, yeah, it's a lot to look forward to for sure.
A lot to look forward to. Yeah, it's going to be a good offense, but it's going to be a very, very good offense.
Mm-hmm. So, this is like unrelated to me today. I don't really think he came up in discussion at all, but we have not recorded an episode since Johnny Bowens announced his return to San Antonio and his commitment to UTSA, the former Oregon Duck, one of the most dominating defensive linemen I've seen in person, now a Roadrunner.
Wow.
Coming hot off the heels of Nick Booker-Brown's dismissal from the program. Can you believe that they up-leveled at that position after losing a guy like Nick Booker-Brown? It's wild, man.
It is pretty insane. But this is, that Converse Judson pipeline continuing to stay strong for UTSA.
It was starting to run a little dry, so I'm glad they were able to get him in the fold and get that pipeline flowing a little bit more.
Yeah, and what a way to sort of revitalize that pipeline. But no, man, I mean, look, if you're going to have a pipeline in San Antonio set up from Converse Judson and then a pipeline from Houston coming from North Shore, I mean, we're a pretty good place.
Yeah.
And, Jeff Traylor said something kind of cool about this. Again, talking about the high school coach in me, quote unquote. He likes saying that a lot. Nothing better than developing players for 4 years. And I don't know, it kind of like gave me like this wow moment of like, oh, maybe Traylor's like long, incredible high school pedigree shows a lot about his ability to develop talent.
Mm-hmm.
And something that a lot of head coaches struggle with or aren't able to do, right? They get the talent there, but then they can't develop it and get it to the next level.
Yeah, and that's the key thing with Bowens, right? He's got 4 years to play at UTSA.
I mean, it's just nuts.
Yeah.
It's just nuts. And I think that's going to be a complete anchor here for the defensive line. How quickly does Johnny Bowens get involved?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean,
we're stacked there, right? I mean,
that position is a really, really strong, right? And he wasn't here for the spring. So I'm not going to have the expectation that he's on the 2 deep for Kennesaw State.
Mm-hmm.
We've seen that, quite a bit at that position where guys come in either as transfers or as highly touted, young dudes that you think are going to make the next step. And then it's not until like week 6, week 7, where they hit that 2 deep and start really rotating in. That could be the case for Bowens. And, if he does, I think that says a lot about the depth there. I mean, because Bowens, was he 5-star coming out of high school? I think he's 4. But I mean, that's a very special talent right there. And there's no doubt that even if he's not in that 2 deep, he's just going to elevate this whole program by just his athletic ability. Having, the second string offensive line, third string offensive line going against a player of his caliber. I think some of those young offensive linemen are going to grow up real quick, bucking a grown man like Bowens.
consensus 4-star prospect, ranked as the 5th overall defensive lineman in the state of Texas.
Gnarly.
It's insane. It's insane.
Yeah.
And I'm reading his bio on Oregon Football's GoDucks.com. So that's pretty cool.
It's a pretty good swap, man. We gave him Cam Alexander. We got Johnny Bowens back.
Yeah. There's also Will Stein that they got. So, I mean, it all
Johnny
comes
Bowens
back around.
The player to be named later.
it all comes back around, baby. It's all cyclical. Yeah.
Hey, we'll take Will back as head coach if the time comes.
Slow down.
Well, Adrian, I think we're pretty caught up when it comes to football, man. Anything else we missed from Media Day or any news items that we haven't hit on?
No, man. I think this is really, really, really great fun for Media Day. I don't know. Is there like a couple of sound bits that I forgot to hit on too? I think there was maybe a subliminal dig at the taco scene in Austin, Texas from Jeff Traylor. That was really, really cool. He was talking about the food is the best, quote, the best food in the area, especially if you like breakfast tacos. I was like, man, that was extremely calculated the way that he phrased that, dude. So I thought that was cool. Shout out to the breakfast tacos, Antonio. He said that he reminds the locker room every single day that Army West Point was more physical and mentally tough than they were. I thought that was extremely interesting of a soundbite. And then outside of football, Lisa Campos did give us a hard date, January 2025. We will be breaking ground on the volleyball basketball facility. Should be connected to the race via Sky Bridge.
Oh, they're still doing the Sky Bridge. That's
baseball, great. Softball facility has already started the design phase. They have already secured the dollars for the architects, and they are designing that. That is incredible.
Awesome.
Next on the list is going to be a training table or nutrition hub, nutrition center, which we over at Alamo Audible has been pounding the table on for many years here. And playing stadium facilities for volleyball, basketball, still very, very much down the line. Yeah. So don't get your hopes up on that quite.
Yeah. Or win the Mega Millions and give Lisa a call.
Let's go.
Let's go.
Let's get them scratch offs in, baby. Come on.
Yeah. It's great stuff. And, honestly, just seeing Dr. Campos there for Media Days, right? I'm going to guess that not all ADs traveled to Media Days. Granted, we didn't have to go far from San Antonio, but still awesome to see and to get those more consistent updates from the athletic departments has been nice. I saw the interview with JJ and he mentioned that as well. We just have a lot more information flowing outwards from the department than we ever had in the past. And, speaking of nutrition, there was like an interview with the head nutritionist on Go UTSA recently. And that was really interesting. I learned a lot. So I think UTSA is doing a much better job of getting their brand out there, getting their story out there, getting into the media more often. So it's been great to see. And it feels like it's not been like as dry of an off season as far as like updates, news, content goes, because the athletic department has been so active and putting the stories out there. Right.
Definitely so. And I'll say last, which Jeff Traylor seemed to genuinely mean this. He loves talking about Frank Harris, but he kind of genuinely meant it whenever he said that Frank Harris has been an enormous factor as an NIL liaison. Yeah. And he is introducing Jeff Traylor to some of the wealthiest people in San Antonio. I thought that was fascinating. I don't know how true it is or not. I don't know if Frank Harris is actually setting up those introductions or if those people just know Frank Harris and they love him and it sort of helps Jeff Traylor get into the door.
Who knows?
Yeah. Who knows? I mean, Frank Harris's Rolodex getting pretty big over there working in documentation. So we'll see.
Yeah. Well, cool. Before we send you guys out, I do want to say we're going to start uploading our podcast to like our traditional Alamo Audible Spotify feed, in addition to their Public of Football feed as well. So thank you to ROF for giving us that flexibility. Main reason is because if you search for Alamo Audible on Spotify, that feed doesn't come up. Or the football episodes don't come up, rather. So, if you want to listen on there, on ROF, on YouTube, on Patreon, whatever, you got plenty of options now. It's all the same to us. Those stats get tracked the same either way, but I just want to let you guys know that I'll be popping up in that feed again, just in case you notice it.
So exciting. Yes, football episodes are returning to the Alamo Audible feed. We hope you guys didn't unsubscribe last season.
Yep.
Back, baby. They're back.
Yep.
Also, HomeField apparel is in fact sold out of the Rowdy hat. However, at the Alamo Audible merch store, our kick-ass UTSA hats are always in stock. They're always available. So if you're itching for a new lid to rep the Road Runners in, you can always check the fan shop at alamoaudible.com.
Adrian, it's good that we've got 4K webcams now because people can see the beautiful stitching on your Los Caminos hat.
It really is nice. Beautifully stitched. Nice. Absolutely. Yeah. Get yourself some.
Awesome. Well, we'll send you guys out with some Patreon shout outs. Thank you to everyone who supported us. Adrian, can you we split it up? Can you take the big money donors? I'll do BOT.
Ooh, yeah, I'm ready for this. All right,
awesome. Cool. So thank you to all of our Board of Trustees supporters, including Digitique, John Outwell, Gary and Ruben representing the UTSA Bird Gang Tailgate, Ray Redding and Mimi Apparel, Brandon Grill and the Grow Realty Group, Andy Elizada Profession Benefit Solutions, Ian McClendon and Seeker LLC, Ryan Squares, Waterman Construction, Javon Townsend, VP of the DFW chapter of the UTSA Alumni Association, UTSA Annual Giving, Artisan Vapor and CBD, and Wayne Gonzalez and Runners Rising Project. And I will plug Runners Rising Project as well. I help out with their IT stuff, as a lot of you guys know, and they launched Runners Rising Hoops today. So that's like a program specifically to basketball, right? So if you go on the website, there's a link there. You've got a video introduction from Coach Klonch himself talking about NIL for men's basketball. Any donation through that page is restricted to the men's basketball program. And it's got some awesome perks, right? Meet and greets with the coaches. I think some Final Four tickets are getting raffled off. Happy hours, reserved seating behind the home team of the convo, some other stuff that I know is in the works as well. So definitely a great opportunity to support men's basketball, give them some greatly enhanced NIL support that they desperately need in this really competitive basketball conference. So if you guys will check that out.
I love that the hoops hype train for Austin Klonch is already rolling, baby. A lot of people are very, very excited about UTSA basketball. Got a whole new roster. We got a brand new coach, and we've got a fresh perspective. Hopefully we can build some momentum on it. If you are interested in helping Alamo Audible cover UTSA basketball, please reach out. Let us know. We pay. Shout out to our big money donors, Ben Tovar, the Bunch family, Zach Espericueta, and the San Antonio Podcast Network, Alejandro Benavides, Dan Nerdall, our baseball beat reporter, host of Around the Birdbath podcast, Jacob Cavazos, board president for the UTSA Alumni Association, John Nally, Rick Cortez of Rowdy Road Grillers, and Sumner McDaniel. Thank you guys so much.
Awesome. Well, that'll do it. Adrian, thanks for saving my lungs on that one. Much appreciated. We'll have to split it up, I think, going forward as this list goes longer. But thank you guys for making that a problem for us. Our hearts are filled with joy and appreciation. So thank you guys once again. And we're stoked to get full into season preview swing. We'll see you guys back really soon.